strength. And girls, with our minds, we really struggle with living in a fantasy world. We fantasize about who we're going to marry and, oh, does he like me? Does she like me? And we get so caught up sometimes when really we need to be studying to show ourselves approved unto God and focus on loving God and serving Him and realizing that, you know what? It's not our place to find a mate. It's God's place. And there is nothing as wonderful as being pursued by the one that loves you, because
it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Thursday, June 2nd. This has been like two solid weeks of Duggar content, and I promise we will be getting back into like the normally scheduled content probably next week. I have just been in a rabbit hole with this story, and usually when people are giving me information, it's hard for me to do multitasking on multiple stories at the same time. I also was watching the verdict for Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and I was kind of confused, and then I went back and watched some of the testimony, and I'm glad Johnny won. I've been really reluctant to take a side, but I guess I'm Team Johnny, or Team Truth, right? Josh Duggar, it's been a week since we found out that he will be sentenced to 12 and a half years. And there was a lot leading up to his sentencing with the case that we learned about Josh, the family, and the whole situation. And let's just say that the last week we've had a lot of people come forward. And I'm really so grateful to everyone that came forward. And someone actually reached out to me that knew Josh in Washington, D.C. I'm still trying to verify the tip, but if any of you are watching that knew him when he lived in D.C., I would absolutely love to hear from you if you ran into him, if you were in his circles. I have been trying to find out what his time was like there. It's been so mysterious. So if you knew Josh in Washington, D.C. when he was doing the stuff with the lobbying group, FRCA, send me an email at tips@withoutacrystalball.com. Last week, we had the sentencing, which by the way, transcripts were filed on Monday, and I have requested a copy of those transcripts, just waiting to find out how I can get those from the court. So I'll keep you posted as soon as I have the full transcripts from the actual hearing. The judge was very stern with Josh about his decisions, and that even though he had done good things for people, that what you do when no one's watching is the true test of who someone is. And isn't that the truth? Like when no one's watching and you can't be a good person, that's almost who you are. If you're doing good things to people when others are watching, that tells me maybe you're just trying to look a certain way. Well, I did some sleuthing for you, and I want to thank a couple sources for coming forward with some details, but I wanted to talk to you about two of the people that wrote letters, and one of the people that wrote letters, and then one of the families that had one of their kids blamed. And I want to let you know about how the Duggars handled that situation. So a couple days ago, I told you about how the Wilsons, Denise Wilson, the widow of Clark Wilson, her kids, two of her daughters, and her son-in-law basically accused Anna of manipulating Denise into writing a letter that praised Josh and requested leniency. And they basically said that they didn't agree with their mother-in-law's position and that she had been fooled by Anna and the family. Well, another person that may have been fooled in the situation is Lacount Reber, who was Josh's guardian during the time he was out on bond. So Lacount actually was selected by Jim Bob to be his he was selected to minister to Josh. I don't even know, be a counselor to Josh. during this time out on bond, see, when Lacount sat down at the bond hearing, he basically explained he does ministry for people that are in situations like Josh or that are actually in facilities. And the judge asked, whether or not he thought he would be doing any counseling with him, and he said if it came up, maybe, but it wasn't like their primary focus. He just felt like he needed to do this for the good of humanity, I guess. So I wanted to give you a few details because he was also repeatedly asked whether or not Jim Bob persuaded him to take in Josh, whether or not he was receiving payment in order to do this, if there was any incentive for him to do this, because the court was having a really hard time understanding that someone out of the goodness of their hearts that barely knew Josh was suddenly taking a stranger and let them live with them for like 6 months. But that's what they did. Well, now I can tell you a few pieces of information. One involves why he was picked by Jim Bob. Another involves incentives he allegedly received from the Duggars. And the other one is another incentive. Maybe it's a payoff from Anna. I don't know. So let's start from the beginning. Jim Bob was looking for someone to help Josh, as has been his entire life, trying to find people other than actual professionals to help Josh find the better ways to manage his life. When Josh was getting into trouble, he allegedly tapped on the shoulder of Lacount, who was a member of the church that he attended with Paul Caldwell's church, Lighthouse Baptist Church. I've had a lot of details come out about this church, like the church has basically split, and it was a huge split. It involved a lot of different peoples. It wasn't just the Duggars that were at it with Paul. There was also a quarrel between the Rebers and the Caldwells, and Terry Forsyth and Paul. So it was sort of like coming in all different directions. And eventually it erupted with the Duggars taking all of their friends and leaving. The Rebers left the church with the Duggars. So the Duggars had gotten to know the Rebers through this church, and they had been members with them for several years. The Rebers actually were transplants to Arkansas. They had moved in, I think, 2006, and LeCount and Maria have said that they are both, I think, they met in the Army. So LeCount has his own history with people like Josh because, and this is why Jim Bob actually tapped on his shoulder, because LeCount's own father actually was and has been in and out of the big house multiple times throughout his life. So because LeCount's father has experience being a prisoner, and because LeCount has ministered to his father, Jim Bob, I think, thought that LeCount might be a good mentor to Josh. Also, as I did some sleuthing, LeCount's father, whose name is Dwight Reber, has a history of the same type of offenses as Josh. He was convicted in Oregon of contact with a family member, and he spent time in the Oregon correction facilities. He also was convicted of lewd acts on a minor of his stepdaughter in Idaho, and spent time in Idaho's correctional facility. He's a registered SO in the state of Ohio, and he's had multiple convictions related to this. Long story short, LeCount's dad is a registered SO who's been in and out of jail for years. And Jim Bob thought that LeCount would be able to help Josh. Just because you have a family member that's in prison doesn't actually mean that you are qualified to help someone. It actually made me feel really annoyed, because I would have, my natural reaction in the situation of if my family member was in a situation like Josh or like LeCount's dad, I wouldn't be trying to help other people like my dad or like Josh. I would actually be trying to help the people that my dad or Josh hurt. So instead of ministering to the people that have hurt people, I would minister to the people that were hurt by those people. That's what I would do. And I would want to protect people from people like them. Does that make sense? The way that this world works, where they think that, they need to give compassion to these types of men, it's so mind-boggling to me. Yeah, I get it. You can love your father, but you don't have to try to help them. Some people just, you just have to cut the cord, and that's hard. That's really hard. So He's got a background where he's on the registry in Ohio. His dad now goes by the name Yahshua, which is like a Hebrew name, I think. And I don't know if he thinks he's God or something. It's weird. But anyways, Lacount has this background, and so that was part of the reason why he was tapped to help Josh. Interestingly enough, Michael Keller, who is Anna's dad, was also maybe sought out by the Duggars because he has a prison ministry and might be sympathetic to prisoners. Go figure. So after Josh lived with him, Josh was so helpful to Lacount. He, painted his cabinets, and he had an alarm, and he basically did the, bare minimum to be, a good person on PO, following the rules. Like, I didn't know setting your alarm so you didn't miss work was like something that you could write in a letter, but that was literally something that Lacount wrote about. Imagine like you're being applauded for setting an alarm to get up in the morning. I can't. Okay, so after Lacount was his guardian, and during the time that Lacount was his guardian, he got a couple gifts from the Duggars. One, his daughter married Anna's brother. We've talked about this. So we know that in this world, a lot of the marriages are set up through dads. And marriages like this don't just happen by accident. While they claim there was no arrangement here, and while they claim it was completely coincidental, the optics here don't suggest that to me. But that's just my opinion. So Hannah Reber, his daughter, David Keller meets Hannah in June and is married to Hannah by November. And interestingly, Josh somehow was able to sneak a invite to that wedding and attend, even though the bond conditions of his release were that he not be around children. So he gets his daughter married off, and then not long after the conviction, so something interesting happened. In February, Anna put Lacount Reber on as a registered agent of one of her LLCs, Ravenglass North. So she added Lacount to one of her companies, Ravenglass North. That same LLC had owned property. I don't know if it currently owns property. It had purchased property and placed it in the LLC and then sold that property. I don't know now if it's just an empty company, but he's now an agent on this company. And so I don't know what's going on there, but it's kind of weird that you're adding the guy that was the guardian to your son on a company. I mean, is he getting paid through the company? Weird. I mean, I'm not speculating. It just seems almost like there could be some gifts, maybe. So he suddenly is a registered agent on Anna's business, and his daughter gets married to her brother. If that doesn't smell like a little bit of a payment, I don't know what doesn't. But that's just my opinion. Next, and this is another thing, is that during the trial and even today, Anna and Josh continue to blame Caleb Williams for his crimes. I told you about how they have been telling people that all the evidence points to him and that reasonable doubt is what you need. It doesn't actually have to be him. There just has to be a level of doubt by people that someone else could have done this. Well, in my interview with Caleb Williams, a lot of you were shocked that Caleb would not speak negatively about the Duggars, and that you were shocked that in what he did have to say, he still had like empathy and love and devotion for the Duggars. Well, the Duggars and the Williams have been friends for years, and Dawn, who is Caleb's mom, is actually good friends with Michelle. And that has created a dynamic for Caleb where his parents are still friends with the Duggars. And so for him, speaking out meant that he could upset his parents because they're friends with the Duggars. Even though all of this was happening, Jackson Duggar, who I told you was sent to Alert Academy, turns out he was at Alert Academy with Caleb's younger brother. They graduated over the weekend, and Alert Academy posted the graduation. They live streamed the graduations on their Facebook. And I noticed during the graduation that Caleb's younger brother was announced directly after Jackson, and the two of them went to this event together. Jackson and the younger brother Williams were sent to Alert together, and my source says that Jim Bob Duggar paid for Jackson and younger brother Williams to attend. The Academy's tuition is around $4,500. And so the Williams essentially get a gift of the Alert Academy admissions, and the Duggars get to blame Caleb. I'm not saying that that's a payoff. It just seems like a good deed that was maybe done knowing that they were going to put some heat on the child or of the Williams. I don't know what Dawn feels about it. I don't know what her husband feels about it. I don't know if they're mad at the Duggars or not. I don't know if they've apologized or not. But it seems like this happens to be common for the Duggars. They do something to someone and then they realize that it maybe wasn't the best thing and they might have hurt them. So then they give them a gift of whatever it is. And in this world, apparently money will cloud people's judgments and allow them to overlook bad behavior, which is kind of ugly. Like, I'm not trying to suggest that Dawn should take an opinion here and that she should hate the Duggars and disavow them. But if I were her and they were like literally trying to frame my son for a crime that could put him away for 50 years, the last thing that I would be doing would be accepting money to send my son to Alert Academy with their son, Jackson. I mean, even if you've been friends for a million years, the stress that's put on your other child to try to get their child out of prison, like, isn't that what like would fracture most people's friendships? And I just want to put this question out to the audience. If you're the parent in this situation and a family was blaming your son and you knew your son was innocent, would you then be comfortable continuing in a relationship with that family, or would you cut them off? And then knowing that, do you think they tried to invite him and pay for this Alert Academy thing as a distraction? Maybe she wouldn't pay attention to what was happening in court and didn't know? Or do you think that this is just an honest, good deed by the Duggars? Like, is it a coincidence that they also happened to be gone during the trial? Or during the sentencing? So Jackson's graduation is on Saturday, like 5 days after Josh was sentenced, or 4 days after Josh was sentenced. Don't you think at that point it's not just a coincidence that they were sent away, but also that he might have paid for him to go so that they would still be friends with the Williams, even though they were blaming him? Like, sorry about what Josh is doing to Caleb in court. Here, go to the Alert Academy. Hey, Lacount, thanks so much for taking care of Josh. I'm so glad to know that your dad's like your dad and my son have so much in common. Thanks for helping him out. Here's an LLC and here's a husband for your daughter. Can anyone really wonder now why people write such glowing letters about the Duggars? Because they're confused by the money that they get and the gifts that they get. Newsflash, doing good things for other people when you do bad things and covering up what you've done with good things doesn't make the bad things go away. It just makes it look like you're more guilty. And that's just my opinion. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.